Hi.
Hello.
I'm not the best with cameras.
It's okay.
How are you doing,
I'm
Chiki?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
It's good
Thanks for
to see
inviting me
you.
on this. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, people that are in the room, this is Miss Christian Nunez,
Yes.
and she
Hello.
works. Well, tell them who you are. Tell them what you do. Go ahead, speak to the people.
Sure. So my name is Christian Nunez, and I'm the national president for the National Organization for Women, also known as NOW. It is the oldest and largest legacy grassroots organization that is a feminist organization that works on empowering women and girls and making sure they have a sustainable and safe life. So that's where I am. I'm the second African American president in the history, and since in 57 years, and the youngest woman of color president as well. So we're here trying to shift some things around and make it more inclusive and do intersectional grassroots.
Yeah. So the reason that I wanted to have you on is because my sister friend Nikki Gilbert Daniels had
Yeah.
you on live, and you had a very poignant and mind altering conversation about the state of where we are right now as a people, especially when it concerns mental wellness
Right.
and just the wellness of us in general and being in this country
Right.
during this time. And I thought that you had some very unique viewpoints on where we are, how we got to where we are,
Mhm.
and what we could do to get out of being where we are. So that's why I wanted to have you on, because I just fell in love with how you were speaking.
Well, thank
So yeah,
you
that's
so
why we're
much.
here.
And shout out to Sora Nikki. My Sora and your friend. So I love
Yeah.
Nikki. So yeah. And mental health is my background. That is where I started my career. I've been a licensed clinical social worker since 2005 and a mental health therapist and expert since then. So it is definitely my area of passion for the work in advocacy work. And making sure that all things we do are looking at how they have a mental health impact
Mhm. Yeah.
on everyone, and looking also at like how systems of oppression have impacted on our mental health, particularly with the Black community.
Yes. And so, speaking frankly, I'm just going to ask you a question
Yeah,
because you would know
sure.
better than anyone. Post COVID,
Hmm.
what do we have to do to get things to a more balanced place as a people?
That's a good question. I think what we first have to understand is that we still are in COVID pandemic, right? In some ways, people have stopped wearing masks, they've opened
Hmm.
up spaces, but the reality of it is people are still very much dying every day from COVID. Families are still very much impacted financially from COVID. Survivors of and victims of abuse are still impacted by COVID because they cannot leave. So, and I think not only that, I think what COVID did was in the mental health space is that it really triggered and exacerbated mental health conditions in people that either didn't know they had them,
Hmm.
um, or it re-triggered them and made them like exacerbated instances of the symptoms because you dealt with isolation and you dealt with, being isolated in spaces, having to not have that outdoor interaction, that human connection. So now what we're trying to do is like, how do we repair that? And I think we have to really look at the world differently. We can't look at it the same way
Hmm.
because people are still doing the majority of their work remote. People's lives have been shifted. It's relationships were affected by COVID. So I think the first thing we have to do is be honest about where we are, and that we're still going through somewhat of a pandemic and the aftermath of the pandemic on everyone's mental well-being. And that's not going to happen overnight, right? If you think about it, for people who suicide rate went up, suicide rate in
Yeah.
Black men went up, suicide rate in Black children went extremely up, um, because a lot of times schools were their safe places.
Right.
They can go to school to get a meal. They can have away from homes that maybe not weren't the best. So you put them back in these situations where they're stuck with, this is for all families, unhealthy situations. Just imagine what that has in your mind and your sense of security and support and how that contributes to your wellness. And so now we're
Yeah.
trying to fix that, you know, but we have to say, like, what's the first step is acknowledging and getting some research too more on Black folks and how the impacts of COVID really had on us. Because I don't think there's enough research. I think that would be the first step.
Yeah. So would you say the focus, the primary focus, should it be the children or should it be the parents?
The whole family.
The whole family.
The whole
Well, I
family.
mean, 'cause when you think about it like that, at least when I think about it like that, we're always conditioned to think that there isn't enough money to handle any particular situation. There aren't enough resources around for everybody to get all the help all at once. With that mindset of us thinking that, we would have to ask the question, well, who's primary? Well, where do you go first?
Well, you know, I think that's a hard question because I know, you know, I started out as a child therapist and it was so interesting because people would want to send their kids and say, fix my kid, but didn't want to fix themselves. And that kid has to go right back into the same environment that created the problems that they're dealing with and having. So if we're not looking at the whole family, and this is a big problem in our societies. We want to piecemeal things, you know, we want to like look
Mhm.
at parts of things, but not the whole situation, a whole ecosystem. And then when you piecemeal a family and you say just fix this part but don't fix this part, the other part is still suffering, you
Right,
know. So then you're conditioning people who've been working on improving and working on wellness to go back into a situation that was triggering for them in the first place, a situation where they're either experiencing abuse, a situation where they're either experiencing grief, you know. And those people who they have to rely on are not at a place of wellness. So how can you say just fix the children, not fix the parents? And how can you say fix the parents and not fix the children? Everything triggers each other.
right.
So I think it's like looking at it as like, how do we fix this family? How do we approach it to what we can do for community-based things that gives resources and assets and allocates finances to help fix families and
Hmm.
not, you know, single issue in it or siloing out and saying it's the children or the parents. It can't survive like that.
Right. Wow. Thank you for that. So when Now steps into the situation, tell me like some of the things that you would handle.
So now is really a legislative, we're like really a political organization, right? We're legislative advocacy is our main focus. And we also do a lot of education and awareness. So we're looking at things on the legislative way of how to policies and federal policies and things like that. And for our state chapters can do to impact and shift change and eliminate disparities, eliminate injustices and discrimination. So that's the place we come from, and we look at it from the way of how it impacts women and girls, because the organization was founded to support equality for women and girls. It is
Mhm.
all kinds of members, but it is for the importance of gender equality and trying to uplift women and creating a safe space. So our work is identifying. We have 6 core issues we work on. We work on ending violence against women, racial justice, constitutional equality, which includes voting stuff, reproductive rights and justice, LGBTQIA issues, and economic justice. But what we're trying to do now is look at the saying you can't just look at one, you have to look at all of them and how they affect. And when we're looking at policy, policy needs to reflect the same thing. So if we're looking at the whole person, we can't just say, I'm only going to create a policy with this one person, this one part of this person. We have to
Right.
create whole policies that are intersectional, where they're looking to truly address like the whole person and create solutions that will help impact them in their community for a sustainable life. That's what our push is looking at policies, supporting policies to try to help them get passed through Congress that are really out there for the communities and to really help eliminate injustices that we're seeing and eliminate the isms and eliminate the phobics, you know, and the racism and misogyny that we see. That's what we really truly focus on it now.
And what have you noticed like the biggest pushback is about from the opposition? What's the biggest pushback?
You know, it's interesting you ask that because it's been the same thing women have been having pushback with since existence. You know, women have been fighting for the right to vote. They were fighting forever for that, and they've been fighting for to be, you know, we're still fighting to be added into the Constitution, right? With the Equal
Hmm.
Rights Amendment. To this day, we're at 100 years. So I think what the biggest pushback we have is people saying women don't need this. women, girls don't need this. They don't need this protection. You're already protected enough. You don't really have these issues, so why do you need extra? And it's like, it's not about extra, it's about equity,
Right.
and it's about parity. But a lot of times people push back as they feel like it's an attack on men, and it's not. It's about creating an equitable and safe place for women and girls to thrive without fear, without violence, without discrimination, to be able to be afforded those same opportunities, knowing that they already positioned backwards, knowing that they already have less. So we have to start with equity before we can ever get to equality.
Right. And just to give people that are listening something else to think about, if you, especially in the Black community, if you think about it, the women run the households most of the time. There are more single mothers than there are whole complete families with a mother and a father. If a woman is denied her rights and she's the head of the household and head of the family, what does that do to the family structure?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It all has a trickle down impact, right? So if you're saying a mother is not given like full wage, like right now, we're talking about equal pay day happened this week. And when you look at it, 2023 average, the woman is making like less than 80 cents on the dollar for a white man's dollar. But if you start breaking it down by race, it goes even further. Black women 60 cents, Native women 55 cents, Hispanic women 57 cents. It just gets lower and lower when we're looking at it. We break it down by race and sex. So if you think about all the money that's lost in that can go to childcare, that can go to securing a safe and stable home, that can go to giving breaks for the mothers when they need the parent, the Family Medical Leave Act to take care of their loved ones or their caregivers. All of that has a major impact on that wellness of that mother, that parent, because they're not getting what they need to be able to survive and stay healthy. They're fighting. They're having to choose, do I pay this medical bill or do I pay this gas bill? Because we know that they're working, making so less. So it's so much that's going on, and I think we have to start really paying attention to how this is really impacting women and how women are carrying the biggest burden for majority of the systems of oppression and issues that are happening in this country. We don't want it, we don't want it, but it's true. And if you look at women of color, it's even worse for Black and brown women.
When you really think about it, you don't want it, but you're kind of forced into it for survival's sake, because they're basically snatching us off the streets. Like, men are being piled away. They don't want us on the streets. They don't want us to be active in our communities. And if we are, you never hear about it because they want to suppress it.
I mean, it's a threat, right? It's a threat to talk about healthy Black families. Yeah. It's a threat to talk about healthy Latina families or any family of color, right? It's a threat to say and highlight the strength and everything that's going right in these families, but it's profitable to highlight the negativity.
Yes.
It's profitable to talk about why they are where they are and why we don't give them support, because this is what they'll do with it if we give it to them. So it's profitable for us to focus on the negative things about us, right? And the things that are not working well, because to show the strength shows that everything, that all the stereotypes and all the disinformation and the false narratives are not accurate. So then it would put more light into the white supremacy and the patriarchy that's existing. And we don't want to see this. We're seeing this right now with the schools and the books, and the woke, anti-woke movement, right? Yeah. And removing, courses in African American history courses and history of indigenous people from the books, saying they don't want it there because it'll change and they'll influence their children in a negative way. But really what it's doing is educating them about true history. So you want to whitewash history so you don't have to take responsibility for the impact you've had, like you're saying, with police brutality, with just gun violence, with violence, community violence. You don't want to take ownership for what your contribution to what's happening in these communities.
How about that? And it's a shame because on, in a way, when you take away those things and you don't give us tools to learn about ourselves in the true
Mm-hmm.
sense, you you take away our power. And you take away our power, then what do we have?
Mm-hmm.
And that state of hopelessness that remains, and then ergo the mental wellness.
Mm-hmm. And I want us to even think about that differently. They're not taking away our power, they're silencing it temporarily, right? Because I think
Oh yeah.
one of the things I think is so powerful about our communities and the diversity of communities is that even though we have seen this like time and time again, and we've experienced so many movements, civil rights movement, the women's right to vote movement, it all shows like the resiliency and the strength of these communities. How even with all the things they faced, they still were able to overcome them and push through it. So, and they still fought harder. So maybe they worked really hard to silence because they knew the power, and and they knew it was capable, but they didn't really disempower us. Now, I do believe, though, sometimes there's a self-fulfilling prophecy when you're told something over and over and over again, you start
Mhm.
buying into it. And we do that. All of us do it. We even buy into white supremacy and patriarchy and don't even recognize we're doing it because we've been taught it so long and we've
Mhm.
absorbed it so long that it's hard for us sometimes to break free from it. But I think we have to remember that we still have our power. We are just silenced because that's part of the goal of the oppressor, right?
Yeah, that's true. And if you think about the attack now, the attack's coming from everywhere now. So it's
Mm-hmm.
the social media, television, propaganda's everywhere for it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the worse the better, and like how can I make this look even worse? How can I make this seem so much more dramatic? How can I provide the misinformation, disinformation game is like on a whole nother level, of
Mhm.
what we're seeing. And I think what's important for our community is that we educate ourselves and stay aware of what's happening and not dismiss it as it doesn't impact me because it all impacts us. Like that's part of the goal, right? Is that we won't take the time to find out what's really happening in our
Mhm.
communities because we feel like it doesn't affect us, but in reality it's affecting like every single thing that we're doing in our daily lives. Those taxes they're hiking in your community, those ordinances they're doing, they have
Mhm.
a direct impact on your everyday life and sustainability. And they want to put it in language to kind of, throw us off or make us feel inadequate. But the reality is we have to figure out ways for those who know this knowledge to continue to educating other people in our community so they can go educate their families and let them know like their voice is that power that can shift this imbalance and disrupt these systems of oppression that we are so keep seeing and it's happening every single day.
Would that be part? Well, I know it is part of your advice because you just said it. But the first step to someone actually wanting to be active is to start being active in their own communities.
Yeah, I would say the first step goes back even further. I see the first step is educating themselves and figuring out where they stand,
Mhm.
right? And really figuring out like where do you stand on things? What are your values and your belief systems? And then finding out how those things apply to what's happening in your community. But I think we all have to start with our own personal analysis about what's going on and what's happening to us and affecting us in our lives. So then that way we're more equipped to know what we need to look for when we're educating ourselves. And then we can be more informed to help our community if we can really articulate it and communicate in a way that they can understand it. That's meeting people where they're at instead of people coming and trying to meet us where we're at. Because that happens a lot, right? People expect you just to know in our world. Like, you should just know. Well, how? How should I just know? Who told me? Who taught me? Where did you see it? This rule is in my school books. You have to be willing to educate yourself in a lot of things to get us to the place where we can be active and empowering in our communities.
Yeah, and the truth is, a lot of the time, most of the time, they're banking on you feeling that way.
Exactly.
That no one told me, no one gave me the information. You have to go
Yes.
out here and find it for yourself.
And they're banking on you to be, that's part of the goal of oppressor, right? Is to oppress your spirit so much that you feel hopeless and helpless. And they're
Hmm.
banking on that, Chicky. They're banking on the fact that they want us to feel so helpless and helpless that we just don't do anything, that we're paralyzed. So we have to be more diligent in challenging that and pushing back and remembering our strength and remembering what our history and our legacy, what it's shown us about our people and our communities, so that we continue to push back on those things and not accept that for ourselves. And even if we do, you can't, it's okay to feel hopeless, right? It's okay to feel helpless, but know that your history has showed you this is temporary, and your history showed you that your people were able to overcome these things. So you have to find those connections in your community that can be there for you to provide you that support when you need it, so you're not feeling so isolated. And I think that's the beauty of community work, is matching people with people who they can relate to and can talk to them on, like firsthand. Listen, I've been here. I know what this is, I know what this feels like. This is what I had to do. And that is so powerful. That is so powerful. And it's bigger than anything that any war could do.
Yeah.
It's really,
That's true. That's true. And if you can, those like-minded people that you find, build a team, make a coalition of it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Coalition work is powerful. Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah.
So you travel all around the country, I'm supposing. And what are some of the differences that you're seeing in the different areas of the country? Like the bigger differences.
It's interesting because I think it's like, I don't know how to describe it, because like, I think it's like the overtness of some things, and some things are more subtle. I think that's the biggest difference I see. But the same issues are happening in every part of the country. It just might be how overt they are about speaking out about it, or how, sly they might be about trying to pass things through quietly. Right now we know the South is like, it's a whole nother level in the South, right? But reality is, history's shown us the South has always been this way. It's why people are migrating to the North, and that oppression in the South is so heavy and it's so strong. And the biggest way they do that is to disable communities in the South. They take your polling places away. They take your access to food away. They take your access to fresh water away. They put you in such destitute situations where it makes you hard to focus on anything but meeting those everyday basic needs.
Yeah.
That's a strategy, right? Like,
it is, very much. Very much.
Let me get them so destitute and so deprived in their own everyday living, meaning the basic needs, that they can't focus on the stuff we're doing over here to really try to strip them of all their civil rights and constitutional rights.
Right.
Let's get them focused over here. So we have to
really think about it. It's warfare.
Yes, absolutely. It is absolutely warfare. It is. And I think we have to really, like every community, like Tennessee just passed that law about a religious exemption law. I don't know if you heard about it.
No.
So Tennessee, and one of the things I always tell people, Dobbs' decision, the reversal of Roe, was just the Pandora's box for every other type of, civil rights and human rights that they would want to overturn. And that's basically, and they said that, and the Alito draft brief, their recommendations, what they thought. But what happened in Tennessee recently is Tennessee passed a law was for what they call religious exemption, which for county clerks and personnel that work at the county. So basically, if something violates their religious belief system or value system, they would not have to issue marriage certificates or marriage certificates for these people. So let's say there was a gay couple that came and said that we want to get married. If that person didn't approve or was, homophobic or didn't approve of gay marriage, they could say, you know what, this is against my personal religious beliefs, and I'm not going to issue you this marriage certificate. And I would hold up. Let's say the person was an interracial couple, and they said, hey, we want to get married, and somebody in the South or somebody in the East or North, wherever, this is Tennessee, so it happened in Tennessee. So in Tennessee, would say, this violates my personal religious beliefs about interracial marriage and, race is mixing, so I am not going to support this and not give this marriage certificate. And because it's laws passed, it could hold up.
Mm.
So this is what's happening right now in Tennessee.
So we're moving toward, well, back again to connecting church and state.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. That's huge. And what we're also seeing is Jim Crow never died.
Mm.
Jim and Jane Crow still very much are happily existing in America. They never died. They just rebranded themselves. They call themselves something different. We have mass incarceration. We have police brutality. We have, discrimination against reproductive rights and freedoms, the anti-choice. We have discrimination against gay marriage. We have the trans bans. We have so many things right now, which are still all very systematic, oppressive Jim Crow laws.
Yeah.
But they just rebranded it and called it something different.
I joke around sometimes, and it's really not a joke, but I say it to be smart. It's I say pretty soon we'll wind up back in chains. And my friends laugh, but I'm like, if you really think about it, we're going in that direction.
Well, let's talk about what they're doing in women in prisons. They're shackling pregnant women in prisons to this day, right? They're shackling prisons, And this past midterm, they had a few states that voted against removing slavery from their constitution in 2022. There's still states that have it, and still states that voted against removing it from their constitution. So they still want slavery as an option for punishment.
Wow.
2022.
And let's not forget that in the Constitution, we're still not all the way human. We're not human.
Right. And that's
wow.
And it's like you're seeing laws that want to remind us of this, right? You're seeing laws, especially those who are believers of the original Constitution makers, which never only really even talked about white men, right? They didn't care about white women. They were just like, it's about white men right now. They're trying to revert back to that. There are states that are trying to revert back to that. There are states who are pushing for the state to have more access to and control over federal legislation than anything, so that they can be more oppressive, so they can be more discriminatory, so they can have more institutional racism in their systems. There are states that are pushing back and pushing for that so they can have more control. And that's why I'm absolutely against it. States cannot, because depending on what state you live in, imagine your rights.
Yeah.
If they were given all to the state. Think about your legislators, who's running the houses. Think about Florida right now, DeSantis. Wow,
yeah,
right?
That's crazy.
Imagine if that state had statehood where they had full state legislator rights over any federal. They had to only hear their state, laws.
They could basically design the geographical map of the Civil War. They could do that by changing the laws, because people are going to start moving out of those states, and where they're going to move, probably to the north, where the states aren't doing that as much. That's crazy.
But look at New York. What happened when New York redistricting, right? New York's redistricting for the midterm for this last year, or when they did midterm, they changed the boundaries so much and made it very preferential to conservative, seats. And this is New York, one of the countries one of the states that we think about is like so progressive and so, just for it. And they redistrict, which wiped out a lot of seats for progressive and liberal candidates. And even California has some rules and laws they're putting forth, they're trying to pass, that are very much restrictive of rights, trying to take away people's personal rights. These are some of the most progressive states we see. And we're actually, like what you're saying, we're seeing it happen. We're just calling it something different, So it's like almost like it's a repetition of where we've been. It's just different. It's just like, oh, well, we're going to call it this now. We're going to blame it on this now. We're going to say this is why we're doing this. But it's the same types of things we're seeing happen every single day.
Yeah.
And I think this is why we have to be diligent that we're staying informed and we're speaking out and we're using our voices. That's the most powerful thing we have right now is our vote and our voice, right?
Yeah.
So we have to use it.
And I try to stress how important it is to vote. I actually know maybe a handful of people that really believe that the vote does not do anything. It doesn't count. And they don't vote. And I'm like, please, I beg of you, you don't understand it, well, they don't understand it. And because you don't have a full knowledge of the voting system and what your vote actually does, you opt out of it. But if you would just take the time to educate yourself about what your vote actually does and what it means, you'll jump into it. You can't complain and you can't gripe about things if you don't vote.
Right. Absolutely. And I think this is where also our community can be really effective, is taking a ballot, breaking the ballot down, having a potluck or barbecue, community gathering, anything, and using those times for community to pull people back in and talk to them about what this ballot looks like and what is on that ballot that's impacting them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can't just assume saying go vote is enough, because like you just mentioned, is that people are intimidated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people feel like it doesn't affect them, they don't understand it. This is where our communities can be so strong, especially if we get people of influence and to come out and talk about it. And especially you get people in your community that people respect, and leaders in your community to come out and talk about it. Break that ballot down. Explain what the ballot measure is, ballot initiatives. Explain what the ballot referendum is. Explain how this impacts everyday living. Explain what this looks like if this were to pass, and if it weren't to pass, what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them what voting down the ballot really means. All these things are so important, because those ballot measures are what people use to disempower communities. But people need to understand what a ballot measure is. What's the difference between a ballot initiative, which is new, something new, referendum, they need to understand like all the different parts of it, so that these people are educated enough to tell their communities, did you hear about that ballot measure they're putting out where they want to put back in, like, limiting, you can't give food and water to people who are voting. They want to make that a crime. Did you hear about that? And people say, what? Yeah, then you can be like, okay, well, this is what it really means. This is what it look like. So if you get caught doing this, this is what will happen.
Right.
And now go into the record. Then you have a criminal charge. You won't be able to get an apartment. You won't be able to apply for, this credit. You won't be able to get this job. If you get this on your record for being a good, this is what will happen. We have to break it down into places where people understand how it impacts their life. We cannot, and that's why people feel like they're disengaged and they feel like it's not affecting them, because they don't know how it really impacts them. That's our job as a community.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, when I was younger, I remember going to a lot of community meetings, but I don't see them happening that much anymore. People just aren't that engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they need to be angrier. What do you think?
I mean, anger's good. And I think that anger can fuel, and I don't know why people aren't angry. Personally, as a Black woman, I get it. But I think anger and strategic, is like one of those things where we definitely need people to be more fired up and agitated to, we'll always say, get agitated to action. When I say that, I mean, like, when you're agitated, you're uncomfortable, mm-hmm. right? You are just uncomfortable. You're trying to find some comfort in your life. Look at what's happening in your community as a point of agitation for you. So you cannot sit still. You cannot be complacent. You have to do something. You have to react. You have to disrupt these false stereotypes. Like, get so agitated that's where you want to be. And I think that's why I say agitation over anything, because agitation will make you move. Agitation will make you get up. Agitation will make you change a whole seat in a venue, right? Or, or make you speak out because you just can't take it anymore. That's where we have to get. We have to get agitated to action.
Yeah. Wow. So, do you see, are you hopeful?
I'm an optimistic person. And so I'm very hopeful. I'm a faithful and optimistic person. And I believe that history has shown me that we have done it before, and we will continue to do it. And we will continue to liberate ourselves and fight until we get the true liberation that we want as communities. So for me, I'm hopeful because I already know the strength of our ancestors. I already know the strength of my family members, the women of my family, the men of my family. I already know their strength, right? And I know what they continue to push forward. And I know in our ancestors what they have done to get us where we are now. So if they could do it, when we have less to face than they had to, we can push. We can get a little agitated, we can get a little uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's where I'm hopeful, like just thinking about how they laid the pathway for us to have what we have now. When no one thought that was possible, people thought it was just something you shouldn't even imagine. And here we are now, we have all these rights. So we can speak out. I can call out white supremacy as a black woman, right? And not get arrested. That's a long place to go. And we don't think about those things. You could have this podcast and bring people and talk about these important critical issues, which we couldn't have done like
Mm-hmm.
60 years ago.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So this is because of the work of our ancestors that have worked so hard and didn't give up and stood in line for things that we are blessed that we don't have to stand in line for right now. I always make jokes.
That's so true.
I always make jokes that I couldn't have been born in the civil rights movement. I could have been born in the civil rights era. I would have been arrested. I would have been in
Yeah.
jail. Like I would, my disposition would have got me in a lot of trouble.
I always say I
So
would have been dead because I can be kind of militant. Yeah. Especially like if I felt like you were suppressing me. It's like a bully. What do you do with bullies?
bullying, right? Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the worst thing happening to women too. Women's lives are at risk right now, and I need more people to speak out about it. I need more people to get upset about it, and not just women. Like women's lives are at risk right now. People are dying. Black maternal mortality rate has increased since the Dobbs decision and Roe was overturned. People are literally dying in hospitals waiting for these states that have bans to decide if they
Yeah.
feel like this is this or this is that. I mean, people are being incarcerated. They're charging homicide, femicide, personhood charges to give people felony crimes for having
Yeah.
bodily autonomy. This is serious,
What
you
is
know?
what state is it? The one they're pushing for the death penalty? It's a state in the South. They're pushing for the death penalty.
It was Louisiana, I think. Louisiana, or was it Mississippi? It's one of those states. I know with Louisiana makes it a homicide, but maybe it was Mississippi or Alabama. It's one of those states. I know for sure. But it's a problem. It is a problem, and we got to look at how this impacts our whole family again. We have to look at how this impacts our mental wellness. To be living in a constant state of trauma and chaos and not and hyper vigilant, being hyper vigilant about what's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
next. Carrying that burden every day is serious, and that is a health risk too, and that puts your lives at risk. So we have to look at all those things. I mean, just wondering, you can't even have a conversation with your friend, or you have to worry about a tracker you have on your phone if it's going to be sent somewhere, or being able to have a conversation with your friend and say, this is what I'm going through, because you don't know who's hearing or who's listening or really the values of that person, if they'll turn you in. These are
Right.
serious times we're facing, and I think we have to have more people speak out about it. And that includes men, right, about how these things impact women's lives. We have more people speak out about what they're seeing with voting. I went to Selma for the anniversary of the bridge crossing, the Pettus Bridge crossing,
Mm-hmm.
and this is my second year going. And, when you're in Alabama, you clearly see that they had more rights in 1965 than they have right now. More
Mm-hmm.
voting rights. When they were struggling for it, fighting for it, they have more than they have right now. So
Wow.
I think this is like serious, when you're seeing people, and then not to mention the community, and as a whole, and the impact on the whole community and what that looks like, and why people are still talking about things, but how prisoners are being treated and the food they're being served, and just inhumane treatment that's still existing in some states and some cities. And so we have to look at, like, how do we push against that and not continue to just sit by and let people hurt, because it has devastating effects on all of us.
Yeah. What do you say to the person that has the mindset of that's over there, that's that problem in that state, It's not a part of me. It's not a part of where I live. What do you say to that person that thinks that way?
Well, it's like what Audre Lorde said, I am not free if the woman next to me is not free, even if her shackles are very different from my own, right? And I use that and I talk about it so much because that's what I would say to that person. Like right now, 5 years, no, not even 5 years ago, 3 years ago, many women would have argued that they never thought they'd be in a position they are now, that their grandchildren had less rights than they did. And
Mm-hmm.
they came after women. And now they're coming after marriage equality. And they just continue to come after everything. So I tell people, you may not feel affected right now because you don't have a direct impact. But somebody you know and loves has a direct impact what's going on. And not only that, if they're going to come for one group, they'll come for all the groups.
Mm-hmm.
So our importance is to be in solidarity with those who are oppressed, those who are, you know, experiencing discrimination, those who are experiencing hate. That's our job, is to stand in solidarity with them, because if they will come for them, they will come for us. And
Yeah.
we can't ever feel that we are special or so privileged that it will not happen. Many women felt very privileged, until jobs happen, right?
Yeah.
And now they're like, oh my goodness. So we have to be honest about what's happening. We have to make sure that we are standing up and we're in solidarity with communities all the time, because that one thought, well, that's them over there. Well, when it's your turn, you're going to want everybody else to come in solidarity with you. So it's time to start now.
So true. So true. Oh, wow. It is so fascinating talking to you because, you're like a wealth of knowledge and information.
Thank you.
Do you have anything coming up? Any speaking engagements? Any type of events that people might can attend?
Um, Not for the month of March. And end of April, we'll have another event where we'll be talking about like the feminist point of view on our core issues, and I will make sure I definitely communicate that to you. We don't have a solid date yet, but most likely it's the last week of April, where we've been kind of like our own since the Feminist State of the Union.
Okay.
Where we're talking about things that impact women. And then we'll be also having another series, another Healing is Resistance come out. We're talking more in depth about mental health. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So I would just say anybody who's interested in knowing what we're doing, they can visit, www.now.org. You can sign up for our newsletter, which will give you a list of all the things we have coming up, what legislation we're pushing, and basically how you can get involved. And I just encourage everyone to do that, because we need a multi-generational, a multiracial audience and membership, boots to the ground,
Yeah.
organizers to help us win this war that we're seeing happen in our country.
Yeah. So where can people follow you? They can just follow you at Now.
They can follow me now, or my personal Instagram is Christian, CHRISTIAN _Prez, PREZ, number 4, and then Now, NOW. So Christian _Prez for Now. And then I'm not really clever, so my Twitter is just Chris F. Nunez. You can follow me on Twitter there. And yeah, definitely reach out. If there's something you would like me to come and speak to your community about, I'm open to that as well. It's important we're getting the word out as much as possible. So.
Okay. I'm gonna be in your inbox about something. I have an idea about something.
Bring it on. Put it in the inbox. Yes.
I appreciate you being so open to this invitation, and thank you for coming on. I think you have a wonderful spirit. I think you're a wonderful person. I thank you for being a superhero for us in this country.
And thank you for giving me another avenue and, to talk about what we're trying to do. It's so important to me, and it's so important to the work I do. And one other thing I would say is, I have a son. I have a 3, almost 4-year-old little black boy that I'm doing all this for. Mm-hmm. So I'm raising a feminist son, so he understands that this is what women can do every single day. It's not a question, but also so that he doesn't have to live in a world where his rights are taken from him, and it just by being a black child or a black man, so this is all intertwined and it's all important. And if we can liberate all of us, we will have that full liberation. So that's my goal, and I'm here to work with anybody who wants to get that full liberation for us as a country and a community and a world, you know.
I appreciate you. Like
Thank you so much.
you're everything Nikki said you would be.
It's awesome too. I'm so excited we have met and become friends through Sigma Gamma Rho.
Yeah,
So it's
that's cool.
wonderful.
That's cool. She's
But
a
yes,
cool
please
lady.
reach out if you have ideas. Let me know any way that I could support. I'm really all about supporting our community and just making sure we're connecting
I will.
resources.
I will. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.